Welcome to this educational program presented by Friends of Park County. I'm Heidi Barrett, a member of the Board of Directors. The mission of Friends of Park County is promoting thoughtfully planned growth in order to protect and enhance Park County's vibrant communities, sustainable working lands, and healthy natural resources. Could the Yellowstone River and its tributaries become polluted with human waste from septic systems? That may seem very unlikely when we look at our iconic river and its clear tributary streams descending from the mountains. And yet that is exactly what happened in another part of our region, Teton County, Wyoming. Matt Bombach is a water quality advocate with Protect Our Water Jackson Hole. Matt has a BA in environmental geography from Colgate University and a master's of science degree in water resources science from the University of Minnesota, Duluth. He is a member of the Idaho Master Naturalists and helped implement a volunteer water quality monitoring program for Lake Pend Oreille Waterkeeper in Sandpoint, Idaho. Matt will share the cautionary tale of Fish Creek, a creek very much like the creeks in Park County. He will tell us what happened, why it happened, and how we can avoid the same thing from happening in Park County.
All right, well, thank you very much, Heidi, for the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with y'all, and excited to share the story of our beloved Fish Creek, which you can see here. And yeah, just feel very lucky to be a Teton County resident, and I think that we have a lot to share in common, and maybe a little bit ahead of the curve pollution-wise for compared to your neck of the woods. So let's dive into it. So the Snake River headwaters, it's a connected watershed, very protected land, National Forest Service, Yellowstone National Park, Grand Teton National Park. Very, very fortunate for that. We have a lot of water moving through our community. A lot of it starts as snow up in the mountains and comes down into the lakes. You can see this picture of Jackson Lake up there on the top right, and down here is the Snake River as it makes its way through the town of Wilson. And the DEQ has designated a number of these waterways as class 1s. They're outstanding waters. They're supposed to be protected for their water quality and other designated uses that they provide. Recreation, tourism, fishing, and floating are very big parts of our community here. And along with that, other bodies of water in our headwaters have also been recognized through the Craig Thomas Snake River Headwaters Legacy Act 2009. And actually, Fish Creek is not part of this designation, but you can see on this map to the right of our watershed a number of different streams, segments recognized for scenic, recreational, and wild values. So escalating levels of protection, and very, very fortunate to have this. However, it's the type of protection that only means so much as long as you're monitoring those requirements that are set in stone in the act. So be it pristine water quality, or providing scenic value, or wildlife, cold water fisheries, etc. We're home to the fine spotted cutthroat trout, an endemic species in the Snake River, and benefit a lot from this fishery in particular. So moving on, the Snake River headwaters. The Snake River, as it moves through Teton County, it's what's known as a gravel bed river floodplain ecosystem. And what this means is that the water moving above the surface and underground is extremely connected. Our soils are really gravel and very porous alluvium that allows surface and groundwater to interchange quite readily. And so anything happening on the surface can then get into the shallow aquifer, the hyporheic alluvial aquifer. You can see there in this diagram from a paper written by Rick Hauer, who kind of wrote the Bible on gravel bed river floodplains. And similarly, pollution or anything entering into the shallow aquifer has the potential to come back up into the surface water in one of our streams or Snake River. And another important fact to note is that the Snake River aquifer, the groundwater that supplies drinking water for our community, in 1991, it was designated as a sole source aquifer by the EPA. And that means that it supports the majority of drinking water need for our community, and that it's also the only viable source of drinking water for as many people as require it here in Teton County. So very, very important resource for us to not spoil. So the state of our waters today begins with the tale of a couple impairments. You can see on the map to the right, there's Fish Creek Basin, as well as Flat Creek Basin, which is to the right, and that moves from the Elk Refuge north of the town of Jackson through town before its confluence with the Snake, south towards Hoback Junction. And currently, the entire stretch of Fish Creek is impaired for E. coli, and Flat Creek is impaired for E. coli, as well as altered cold water habitat. So through siltation and stormwater runoff, a lot of anthropogenic land use change through town that's led to the impairment on Flat Creek. However, for Fish Creek, it's more geared toward E. coli. There's the EPA maximum contaminant limit of 10 micrograms per liter of nitrate, which is often exceeded. They also have MCL of, I believe it's 126 colonies over a standard set of time for E. coli, which is used as an indicator of often fecal contamination. And a recent study by a University of Wyoming graduate student was able to determine that in both Fish and Flat Creeks, from what could be quantified of the bacterial community, the dominant source of fecal contamination was human wastewater. So in both systems, it's people that are leading the way in terms of sending unwanted bacteria into our surface water. Now, it's important to note that pet waste is also an extreme concern in our community. We have thousands of dogs here in Teton County. Dog waste is very different than, say, elk or moose, grazers that are eating what's in the natural environment versus processed, nutrient-rich pet foods. But it is humans leading the way in terms of letting pollutants get into our surface water. Now, this has a number of impacts, and I mentioned nitrate briefly, but along with bacteria, we have nutrients getting into the surface water, and that has led to recurrent algal blooms. These pictures are taken from Fish Creek in the summertime, and unfortunately, they are also taking place on the Snake River. This is epiphytic, so it's attached algae, filamentous, that grows on the rocks. It's not necessarily toxic cyanobacteria, which can be a problem more so in standing water systems like lakes and reservoirs. But still, this changes the freestone aesthetic of our gravel bed rivers. It impacts fishing. It makes floating a little bit less desirable. There are oftentimes blooms down in Hoback River Canyon where a lot of the whitewater rafting and scenic floats take place. So it's changing the way we interact with our environment here, and not for the better. And finally, I'm going to go back to nitrates for a little bit. I mentioned the EPA MCL of 10 micrograms per liter. And generally, it's regarded that anything over 3 is indicative of human impact in watershed. And for decades now, residents in specific areas around Teton County have had exceedances of nitrate levels in especially their private well water. So many residents are going to different places in the community to fill up drinking water if they can afford to. And others are adding advanced filtration, either on site or in a kind of a community block approach, taking on a number of households, cleaning their water together. So it's leading to increased cost and increased risk for people drinking the water here. So not a trajectory that we'd like to be on. And how did we get here? First things first, draw some attention to this picture on the right here. This is taken along Fish Creek Road. You can see homes built just adjacent to the creek. The hill slopes down, it gets flat, and then you're on the floodplain. And most of the development along Fish Creek, but also in Teton County, has taken place on the floodplain. So areas where sometimes the water table is less than 2 feet underneath the surface of the ground. And along with that, if your home is not in a place where you can hook up to sewer systems, it's going to be using a raised mound septic. Now, there's various different types of these, but in general, these are what persists along Fish Creek in particular. And so in the wintertime, it gets very cold here in Teton County. The microbial activity changes. They're not able to treat the waste as effectively as in the summertime. And as well, we just oftentimes, depending on the area in particular, but there isn't enough soil for the leachate to be treated by the soil bugs as it's making its way down towards the aquifer, percolating through the soil. So because of the porous, gravel-rich nature of the soils we have here, and the fact that it's really cold in the wintertime and there's limited room vertically for these systems, it's led to a lot of partially treated waste getting into that shallow aquifer. And it's important to understand this process in the context, the legal framework that exists here in Wyoming. Wyoming is the only state that does not administer the public water system activation, drinking water monitoring, consumer confidence report, sanitary survey, and lab certification programs of the Safe Drinking Water Act. Though Wyoming does implement source water assessments and source water protection plans, so studies and protections around especially private drinking water systems, they're not regulatory programs. So there's a lack of enforcement and making sure that we understand what's in our water and how we're protecting our private drinking water. Now, along with this, there's the permitting process for small wastewater facilities for septic systems. And while they're pretty stringent and technical for permitting a new system and putting it in place, the enforcement and regulation behind maintaining this system isn't quite up to speed with where it needs to be, particularly in the ecological context of our valley. So it's allowed systems to persist for much longer than is recommended, and not work as effectively as they should. We have a lot of seasonal residents here. We have a lot of people who I just think don't understand the nature of a septic system, things you can and can't flush. And when you have very pulsy use and all the other environmental conditions, it's led to suboptimal septic performance across our county. So we're fortunate in that we have had a number of different studies take place on Fish Creek and throughout our watershed. The USGS has worked with Teton Conservation District on a number of studies now for a couple of decades going back to better understand the forces and trajectory of our, in particular, surface water health, with a focus on Fish Creek. In 2013, they released a study that said that there is something about between 13 and 180 times as much algae in Fish Creek as there are in similar baseline streams throughout the region. And in 2016, they followed up and tried to add a little bit more resolution and understand what's driving that theme and quantify the nutrient inputs into the Fish Creek watershed. And while they did determine that septics were part of that problem, the study assumed that septics were operating properly. And hopefully, based on my description on the last slide, we kind of understand that that's a pretty idealistic view of what's really happening on the ground here in our watershed. So might have misrepresented the weight that septic systems could have, but they did also identify atmospheric deposition, livestock, which there was a history of more ranching going on at the headwaters of Fish Creek. There's still cattle there, a little bit less today, as important factors. But we've been led to believe that septics are that area that we can control and that might be driving our undesirable trajectory. So what we're doing now, well, all these studies led to the formation of a group called Friends of Fish Creek that's now Protect Our Water Jackson Hole. Understanding the ecology of our valley, it's been important to expand the scope of work for our group to address water resource concerns across Teton County, the Snake River headwaters. Now, POW-JH helped kickstart a water quality master plan with Teton County, and that is an outside consultancy that's come in to take a holistic view of the vulnerable areas in our community and the low-hanging fruit projects that we can nip in the bud pretty quickly and be able to address some either point source or pollution, or take more of a pragmatic look at our infrastructure, say, and figure out where we can get more people hooked onto sewer and take pressure off septic systems, et cetera. Now, Town of Jackson has done a terrific job with stormwater projects, be it the creation of a siltation trapping device called Carnes Meadow right through town that takes a lot of stormwater and especially sediment, which is the most common surface water pollutant across the country, and removes it from our surface water before it goes back into Flat Creek. So that's really working towards removing that impairment there. And the Conservation District continues to fund a number of different research projects and provide drinking water test kits and other resources for residents to better understand and protect their drinking water quality. However, it's still a problem. I'm not quite sure if there is such a thing as a housing crisis up in your neck of the woods, but here, deficient workforce is rearing its head in a number of ways. So be it lack of contractors or town and county workers to be able to review permits for new development proposals coming through, or implement municipal projects that need doing, that are funded and just waiting to go through. But also at the state level, and the Wyoming Department of Environmental Quality, this year we were hoping to see the 2022 integrated 305B and 303D report, which shows an updated assessment of impaired water bodies throughout the state. And we were really optimistic that the report would, one, be released, and two, include Fish Creek as nutrient impaired. But that report has yet to be released because of lack of human people power at DEQ being able to produce it. And so Fish Creek remains unlisted. So despite all the work we've done, the advocacy, the research, to get to this point, Fish Creek remains on an unsustainable trajectory, and also is still hanging out in the open as far as, even though it's designated as a Class 1 outstanding water, it's supposed to be protected. We're still developing in that watershed. We're still potentially adding to the issues that are degrading the creek. So we have some work to do yet. So what does this all mean for Paradise Valley, Park County residents? Here's a picture of Fish Creek and its upper reaches north of Teton Village. It's quite beautiful. Well, I'm sure you've heard the old saying that the solution to pollution is dilution. And Teton County, town of Jackson, we benefited a lot from that. We've had all this great bounty of water moving through, some of the cleanest ambient water conditions you can have in the lower 48 states. However, we're still where we are today. Drought is persisting, water use has increased, especially in the last decade. And so pollution is getting concentrated, be it in the surface waters or in the aquifer itself. And really, it's hard to go down into the aquifer and clean it out. So my proposal to y'all is to prevent pollution in the first place. Does your trajectory of development resemble what's happened along Fish Creek? Perhaps that's not a good trajectory to be on. Now, the other point I'd like to make is that, I said before, we've been very fortunate to have as much research get done in Fish Creek watershed throughout Teton County as there has been. You don't know what you don't know. So we're really fortunate to have greater resolution on the issues that we can take action on. However, it can be kind of a recurring cycle to get into studying with greater resolution and to take a different angle on what common sense tells us is a problem spurred by development. And so my other piece of advice or ask for your community is to, yes, refine your understanding of the problem, but don't stop there, and take that information, change policy, change community understanding, and help guide a sustainable development trajectory for your community. So that's the story of Fish Creek, and I'm going to turn it back over to Heidi.
Thanks very much, Matt. Friends of Park County is grateful to Matt and Protect Our Water Jackson Hole for their contribution of time today and for the advocacy work to protect our region's water quality. If you think what happened to Fish Creek could never happen in Park County, consider this table from the Park County Community Foundation's 2022 State of the County report. 1,000 septic systems have been approved since 2010. Each domestic septic system generates on average about 25,000 pounds of sewage polluted water every year. The 1,000 new septic systems approved by Park County since 2010 generate approximately 25 million pounds of sewage contaminated wastewater into the groundwater every year. This pollution is in addition to what is generated by thousands of septic systems approved before 2010. Consider this map of septic systems that was published as part of the City of Livingston's 2021 growth policy. Each of those red, blue, and yellow dots is a septic system approved around the City of Livingston. As you can see, many of them north and south of Livingston are close to the Yellowstone River. What do all these septic systems mean for the Yellowstone River? We don't know because there is no regular testing of water quality in the river or its tributaries. We know from our 2022 scientific poll of Park County voters that an overwhelming majority of voters in Park County, Republican, Democrat, and Independent, place a very high value on preventing pollution of the Yellowstone River. 79% think it is either extremely or very important, and 94% think it is somewhat, very, or extremely important. Fully 97% of Park County voters think it is important to protect our drinking water supplies from pollution. 88% think this is either extremely or very important. What we need to do to protect the Yellowstone and our drinking water from pollution by sewage. We need to start regularly testing the water quality in the Yellowstone River. This kind of water quality monitoring is being done on the Gallatin River by the Gallatin River Task Force. We need independent scientific research to determine the limit on the maximum number of septic systems that can be approved without polluting the Yellowstone River or drinking water supplies. Until that is done, Friends of Park County believes we must consider adopting a moratorium on new septic systems near the Yellowstone River and its tributaries. Our polling shows a strong majority of voters support a moratorium on new septic systems within 500 yards of the Yellowstone River. How you can help. If you, like almost everyone in Park County, is concerned about protecting the Yellowstone River and our drinking water supplies from septic system pollution, please take these 3 steps. First, share the link to this video with your friends. Second, tell your elected officials you want them to take action to protect the Yellowstone River and drinking water from pollution. Third, contribute to the work of Friends of Park County by making a contribution of money, time, or expertise. To learn more about the work of Friends of Park County, visit our website, friendsofparkcounty.org. You can find other educational videos on the website. Thank you for watching.